Bioinformatics.
Okay, welcome to Lecture 2. Today I'm going to be talking about how the file system is organized, something you may or may not be familiar with, but is very important when we're working within our remote servers, as well as kind of a brief kind of intro into the Unix shell. A lot of this probably won't make a whole lot of sense until you start going through the lab, and then maybe things will start to click. So before I go too far, I just want a reminder that if you haven't gone to the required software and downloaded Slack and used the link to join our class server, please do that. Slack is one of the best ways to kind of quickly send code to other people or to many people at once, as well as just general communication for us without having to deal with the chat box inside of Zoom. It's also a nice way for you to communicate with me outside of class if you're having issues with your code. So the Unix file system is actually just like that of Mac and Windows. There's just some slightly different names. So if you're familiar with Windows, you know you're used to having maybe a C drive, and within the C drive you have a bunch of folders or directories, as we might call them. And then it's hierarchical. Within each folder you might have more stuff and more folders, and within each one of those you might have files and more folders. Same with the Mac. If you're looking in, here's my Fall 19 folder. Inside that I have a Week 1 folder, and inside that I have a folder called Print for some reason, and then some other stuff. That is what's represented here in kind of the general Ubuntu file system. And so the nice thing about this is it's very consistent. At the very top level, we have what we call the root. It's just the slash. It's basically, think of it as like the root of the tree. It almost looks kind of like a tree if you go left to right. And the root is basically the highest level of organization. It's the equivalent of like the C drive on your computer. And so at this root, you have all of like the most important system and other applications required to run Ubuntu. And many of these you don't want to mess with. Also, if you ever hear about hacking a phone or a PlayStation or something and getting root access, that's what that means, is that you're getting access to a place where you're normally not supposed to be at the root. Where you're normally supposed to be is what we typically call the home directory. By convention, this is referred to as home. It's basically your level of, the top level of you as a user. So if you're a user named Lucy and you log into a Ubuntu server, you're always going to default into starting in this home directory. What the names from the root to the home directory can vary a little bit, but within the home directory is where you're typically going to have kind of the equivalents of like a desktop if you have graphics, library directories, pictures, scripts, all sorts of stuff. And above that is where you have the root and things like that. So something that's important in Unix or Ubuntu is being able to provide a path from where you are to what you want to do. If I was sitting right now in this Lucy home directory and I wanted to act on this data.txt, I can't just type data.txt because there's no data.txt in this current directory, this home directory. But if I typed /documents/data.txt, now I've provided a relative path from where I currently am, going through that documents folder that's in the folder I'm currently in, and now looking in there for data.txt. That's what we would call a relative path. An absolute path is where we provide the full path starting either at the root or from the home directory. See this little squiggly line? It's called a tilde. You can do this tilde slash from anywhere, and it knows that you're talking about this home directory. And again, this is probably a lot of information right now, but it'll make sense as you start going through the labs and over time. So the relative path to data.txt, the absolute path from data.txt could either be tilde/documents/data.txt, and I could use that from here in temp. I could use that from within the scripts folder. I could use it anywhere because the computer knows to start here and then look for a documents folder and then look for data.txt. Alternatively, I could also do a full path, absolute path starting with the root. I could say /users/Lucy/documents/data.txt. How you provide your paths or don't provide your paths is really one of the biggest issues I see students stumbling in this class. And that's part of it. It's something you just have to learn, and it's not super intuitive at first, but you will get the hang of it, I promise. In your Ubuntu servers, the one big difference here is that it's named slightly differently. So typically here we're seeing /user/Lucy, and then that /Lucy is actually the home directory. Kind of unintuitively, in your Ubuntu servers, the user folder is actually called the home directory, but the home directory is called Ubuntu, which is the username when you sign in. So try not to get confused with that. I understand that you might. Just know that this actual home directory is above your home directory. I know that's confusing. Ubuntu is your username, and the Ubuntu directory here with the tilde is actually your home directory. Okay, so while you're navigating around in here, there are some keys to kind of understanding where you're at. You're going to see something along these lines. At the beginning of your command prompt, you're going to see your username, which is probably Ubuntu at whatever the IP address of your server currently is. And then you'll see your directory. What directory are you currently in? So right here, I can already tell you, scripts, this person is sitting right here. Now, they're going to go ahead and use some commands here, ls, which we'll talk about in a sec, and list out which files are within their directory. So you can see that they've got renamer.sh and test.py. They can also cd, which stands for change directory, and provide a path to the directory that they want to go. Here, and you'll learn in your lab today, ... is short for go up one. So here they're saying go up one and then go down into documents. So if they're in scripts and they go up one, they're back to the home, and then down to documents. So this is an example of a relative path. This only will get you into documents if you're sitting in kind of one of these folders that's below the home directory. So here's an example of how to, provide a different relative path. If we're sitting in the home directory, here you can see I've got the tilde signifying that I'm in the home directory. Again, the tilde is shorthand for that. And I can cd into scripts, so that would move me down into there. I could then ls and see what's in there. So something that might not be obvious, when you're having to type all these names and things, try to keep your names simple, particularly for directory structuring, and do not add spaces to your names. Look how much easier it is for me to cd into a Dropbox folder versus cd into my OneDrive folder that has spaces between all these words. Spaces have meaning in code. And in order to actually treat them as spaces rather than the end of whatever command you're running, you have to add a backslash before every single space. So you end up with this kind of really ugly format that takes a long time to type out if you're going to type it all the way. So always avoid naming things with spaces. Use an underscore if you have to. So these are the basic commands that you're going to be using on a daily basis. You could take a little notebook and write them down. Writing things down helps you remember. But just like learning another language, learning via immersion, you're going to just pick these up and not forget them at a certain point. PWD will always print out what the path to the directory you're working in is. So if you ever can't figure out what the path is to where you are, you can type PWD. LS will list whatever's in your current directory. CD will change your directory to where you want. Make-dir will make a directory. RM will remove a file, or RM-R will remove a directory. One thing that's important to note is that there's no trash can. When you RM something, it's gone forever. And then we'll learn how to use copy and moving files in today's lab as well. So those are examples of commands. Now, commands can be modified so that they have a little more flexibility, and the modifications are called arguments. So here we're LSing, and when we ls, we get the files that are in that folder or directory. Now, if we want to see more information about them, we could use an argument, in this case -l, which will provide more information than just the name. So here we can see read-write permissions of different user levels. We can see when it was last modified, as well as the name. But how do you know which arguments are available for a command? Well, if it's a kind of a default command that's built into Ubuntu, you can use the command man, which stands for manual. So if you're hungry, you could man which, which is another command itself, which is a command. And if we man which, we can see what the which program does. We can see that it will take a list of command names and search for a path to where the actual executable for that command is housed. And then you've got a list of arguments beneath that you could scroll through. So let's try it out. If you were to type which man, it will say man is, and here you can see the absolute path to where the computer gets its information for what it should do when you type man. So user bin man. We could actually go there and delete it if we wanted to mess things up. So this is a lot. I gave you kind of a list of several kind of really common commands. This is also a nice cheat sheet. I actually have made this link available under the resources tab in Canvas. It's got also Python and stuff cheat sheets below it, but ignore those. But it's got several pages of just kind of nice Ubuntu or Shell or Unix commands and kind of what they do and some common arguments that you can add to them as well. So I would kind of encourage you to kind of look at that and use that as a reference as you're going through things as well. So there's really no way to learn other than just diving in and learning the hard way for particularly the first kind of time you dive into this. So what you're going to do now is you're going to log into your server during our regular lab period, and you're going to open up the file I have that's called Lab2, and you're going to start working through it. And you can use whatever resources you want to get through it. I encourage you to take your time with it. Don't copy and paste. Try and type things out. Copy and paste if it's a long URL, something like that. But really try to type and think about what you're doing. And pay attention to when it talks about tab completion, because tab completion is really, really important. It helps you avoid misspellings and lots of common issues with pathing to different directories. I also have gone through this entire lab and recorded myself talking through it, and I will make that available as well as a resource. So go through it on your own for sure the first time, but then for areas you get stuck, go back, check out this video I made and see kind of what I have to say or how I do it. And hopefully that'll kind of help things make sense for you. All right, I'll be in there ready to help you.